so. He is expected to speak for about 15 minutes about the security challenges facing the United States, but perhaps more important from the administration's view, about the need for Americans to come together to remember the unity that was brought about after the 9/11 attacks, and to try to rekindle that spirit to deal with the challenges that are facing the nation today. As you can hear, the president's arrival may be close at hand because of the sound of helicopters overhead here in Washington. But after the observances and after this final concert here at the Kennedy Center, there's going to be the next day and the next day and the day after that. And joining me to discuss some of the challenges facing the Obama administration in terms of dealing with unity, in terms of dealing with reconciliation between Muslim and non-Muslim alike, is Geneive Abdo. She's with the Century Foundation, a longtime journalist, an expert on Mideast affairs. Geneive, let's talk first about the tensions between Muslims and non-Muslims a decade after the September 11th attacks. Is this new, or did this uncover something in American society that perhaps we didn't want to acknowledge before?
Well, what's interesting is that in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of polarization in American society. So now you sort of have a Muslim population that before 9/11 was almost invisible. I mean, most Americans weren't even aware that there were Muslims living in the United States, believe it or not. And now there's too much awareness, there's too much fear. According to a lot of surveys, the majority of Americans have very negative views of Muslims and Islam. And then you have a few million Muslims in America. The number of Muslims is debated, but it's anywhere from 3 to 6 million Muslims in the United States. You have a Muslim community that has embraced its Islamic identity as a response to 9/11. So there are women wearing headscarves, there are more Islamic students associations all over university campuses. So they're embracing their Islamic identity because they want to show what they think is the true power of the faith and the true interpretation of the faith, which of course is not violence. And so that has created a very fierce and rigorous national debate about what should Americans think about Islam. Is it the religion of the 9/11 hijackers, or is it the religion of most Muslims in America who are very peaceful?
Much has been made of the president's outreach to Muslims around the world. His speech in Cairo in June 2009, his appointing of a special representative to Muslim communities, Farah Pandit, the other efforts to try to engage the United States with countries across the Middle East and where there are majority Muslim populations. But what about here within the United States? Has the Obama administration done enough in your view?
Well, for Obama, this has become a very politicized question. And so we saw in the beginning of his administration a great sort of public pronouncement about engagement here in the US, engagement abroad. But now that has been used against him politically by his political opponents. So we've seen a lot less emphasis on Muslim engagement, on engagement both here and abroad. And as we get closer to the presidential election, I'm sure that we will see even more de-emphasizing of this whole policy of engagement because the other side, the right, uses it against him. And as everyone knows, he's going to face a really tough re-election battle.
But when his supporters say, look, the president has engendered a lot of controversy because of his apparent reliance on the use of unmanned airborne drone attacks in Pakistan and Yemen and perhaps in Somalia as well, because of the killing on May 1st of Osama bin Laden after a decade-long hunt for him, wouldn't his supporters be able to argue, look, if the president were so afraid of showing, that he's a Christian, and he's not, really an American, why would he then turn on fellow Muslims if he were a Muslim?
Well, that's certainly what his staff and his administration, those are some of the arguments they're making. I think that, of course, in the broader Islamic world, we saw demonstrations in Pakistan after Osama bin Laden was killed. So it's almost as if no matter what Obama does, he is either criticized here and abroad for different reasons. But certainly the arguments that you just articulated, certainly those will be what his administration hopes will try to get him reelected. And that's why there has been so much emphasis on the killing of Osama bin Laden here in Washington.
Regardless of the political season, we do know that Barack Obama has another 14, 16 months guaranteed as president. If you were advising him on this issue of improving relations between Muslims and non-Muslims, what would you tell him to do?
That's really tough. I think that certainly the wise thing for him to do at this point would be to de-emphasize any sort of engagement, because if he's associated, I mean, if you remember, of course, there was a big issue about whether he's a Muslim or not. And so any sort of clue that he's associated with Islam is turned against him. And so I think that he walks a really slippery slope, and I'm sure that what his campaign advisors are advising him to do is to distance himself. If you notice, he's also distanced himself from the Palestinian issue. I mean, he's not even on speaking terms with Mr. Abbas these days. So he's really have to be cautious as we go forward.
All right. Geneive Abdo with the Century Foundation, thank you so much for joining us. And we will send it back to you in New York. Patty, Tony.
Okay, Ross, appreciate it. Thank you. And I think we've got some